This new Netflix documentary, The Perfect Neighbor, centers on a 2023 murder of AJ Owens. This is a 35-year-old mother of four who was shot through a closed door by Susan Lorenz. This was her neighbor in Ocala, Florida. Now, Owens was confronting her neighbor after Lorenz, the neighbor, allegedly threw a roller skate at her child. Now, this case sparked national outrage, and it renewed the debate over Florida's stand your ground laws. In August 2024, Susan Lorenz was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 25 years in prison. This documentary we're going to be reviewing today, it uses CCTV and police body cam footage to bring viewers inside the confrontation and aftermath. It's an incredibly fresh take and a very raw take, especially for something on Netflix. Now, trigger warning, this is going to be, well, number one, trigger warning, if you're watching the Netflix show, be prepared, it will rip your heart out and stomp it on the ground, but also make you want to throw something at the screen. So if you're holding your coffee cup, put it down, okay, is what I'm getting at. Right? So what you are going to want to do though is get yourself a seatbelt, buckle it up, get your coffee, get your puppy, and let's jump into today's video.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup, hey, hey.
Now hold on everybody, let's do a quick sofa sidebar now. Keep in mind, ain't no cop, ain't no doctor, ain't no lawyer, ain't no therapist, ain't none of that fancy credentialed stuff, okay? Only credentials we got up in here is my sass, and this sofa. Now keep in mind also, I'm just giving my opinions on very public information, so do your own research, come to your own opinions, and drop them off in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you do like what you see here at the Sofa Squad, drop a little like, drop a little comment, drop a little share. It helps the channel out immensely. Now let's get edition. Hello Sofa Squad and welcome back to the sofa. That's a sofa. This is a Paul. That's you. My name's Paul if you're new to the channel. If you're not new to the channel, my name's still Paul. Okay. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say this before we get into it. If you're familiar with my channel, you'll know I do a lot of like video clip reaction, stuff like that. Word on the street and from other people is that Netflix is going and like claiming and striking a lot of people's channels for using the body camera footage, all this kind of stuff. So we're going to be doing a lot of talking in this video and looking at still frames and things of this nature. So just know this will be a little bit of a different format, but nonetheless, we're still going to be talking about this absolute just WTF moment of a documentary. And what I want to do is talk about this, talk about the director, her choice that she did, talk about what Susan is still claiming, where the victims' families are today, you know, what's going on with it behind the scenes that we didn't really see in the documentary. So let's get everybody on the same page for those who have not watched it, and let's talk about, you know, just some key elements of it. Okay, so let's talk about the setting. Now, like I said, this is in Ocala, Florida. These are these apartment complex. You'll see them on the screen here. So this is, you know, a small little neighborhood. It's, you know, families, that kind of a thing, right? Now, Susan lives in this one apartment, okay? And essentially my take on it is that what she has done is said, you know, her apartment's here, there's I think the victim's apartment is over here. They're like little duplexes. And there's a grassy area that the kids, being kids as one would expect, they're using it to play football, tag, all this kind of stuff, right? Well, Susan has declared this is like private property. And this will be a huge thing where she puts these signs out, private property, blah, 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 blah. We will get into, as we go, the discussion of kids and being noisy, and then, you know, where you draw the line in neighborhoods of children being a nuisance, and who can say this and who can say that. But just know that that's the layout, okay? Here's her little duplex apartment. There's a big open grass area. She has taken ownership of it. She has no legal rights to do so. Okay, so just let that be known. Now, keep in mind with Susan that she lives alone, okay? And she often called police, and I'm talking about she stayed on that phone, okay? Calling police on these children, on noise complaints, on being threatened, you name it, right? She kept the police busy with absolutely just completely wasting resources, okay? There's no reason for her to be doing this. Now, keep in mind, AJ, this is the victim, the mother. So the police records would show like between 2021 and 2023, like leading up to this, there's, I believe, like around 6 different phone calls between the households leading up to the murder, okay? And these again would center around Susan calling, talking about,
oh, the kids are playing outside. Oh, the kids are doing this. Oh, the kids are doing that.
Cops coming, having to intervene. What happened? What took place? The whole 9 yards. Okay, now also keep in mind, Susan is a white lady. AJ Owens is a black lady. Now, the only reason we're bringing that into the picture is because of what we're about to talk about. So one of the things things that Susan would do is she would record AJ's children, which is super creepy. She'd record them. She would, call them racial slurs, derogatory names, etc., etc. Okay. She would say things that I'm not going to even say, right? Okay. But very wrong, racially driven things that she's saying to these kids, right? Keep in mind, she has taken ownership, pretend ownership of this piece of property. When we talk about, she was white lady, she was black lady, this is why we're bringing this up, because this will become, Susan made it prevalent, okay? So that's going on. So imagine that tension. Imagine you have, and in the documentary, you see where the kids refer to her as the Karen, right? And it's 100% what she was doing. So imagine you have her calling the cops on your kids, calling your kids these racially derogatory names, so on and so forth. And most likely, in my opinion, making stuff up. Okay. Now, we can sit here and say this as well. Kids are going to be kids. Kids are going to, want to try someone, test someone, especially when they're getting that kind of pushback or whatever. 100% get that. But the stuff that Susan was doing, she was exaggerating and she was pivoting herself to always be the victim of it. So put that little pen up over here. Let's keep marching forward. Now, remember, like I said, that, the cops would come and all that. They never found any wrongdoing. Okay. They would just basically have these documented things of like a police report, basically, if you will. Okay. So all this time she's doing this, and you can tell in the documentary, the cops are just exhausted with it. They'll come get Susan's story, then they'll go over to AJ or other neighbors and whatnot. Okay, what happened? Okay, well, she did this. One example with Susan was like, she meaning the victim, AJ.
She picked up the private property sign and threw it and hit my leg. I want to press charges. I want to do this.
Well, everyone else around was like, no, she had the sign and she tossed it. It went in her direction. She did not strike her and attack her with the sign. So you can only imagine. Look at the things that we follow here in the true crime world of what's going on. The cops getting called continually because this Karen is like, her children are being loud and boisterous. Right? Now, let's pause here and use this talking point here for a second. So here's my thing. Okay, I don't have kids. I was an only child. I'm kind of used to being around quietness is what I'm getting at. That being said, I tried to sit here in the beginning and look at it and being like, okay, I see where her apartment is. I see the kids like to play there. Sure, there might be some times where they're being a little extra to try and provoke her, because trust me, I would probably be doing some stuff too. If somebody was calling me these, like some of the names she was calling these kids and doing this stuff, like, right, I get it. Okay, that being said, in my world, I was watching it and I'm thinking this to myself and I'm like, with their kids, like, if you don't want to live there, then don't live there, right? I don't know what else you would do. It's almost like, and the cops even said this, like, some people live in an apartment and the above stairs person can be noisy. They might have kids. Like, you're living in a scenario where people are peopling, but you're saying, I don't want anyone to people. She's saying,
well, no, but this is my property.
It's not her property. Okay, so she has no right over it. So fast forward here also, in an interview that she did post this, she did an interview from prison, and this stuff, you can Google this stuff. It's all online. I just don't want to use it here because, again, Netflix is like taking ownership of the entire case or whatever. She does an interview from prison and she's like, okay, well, you know what? I was getting ready to close and buy this property, and I can't remember what she said. Maybe she was going to put a trailer on some property, something like that. She was so close to doing this. And my thought was, if you want to live in quiet and solitudeness and you can do something, she was an able-bodied woman, so it's like, do what you got to do, save your money up and go live like that. But right now you don't live in that situation. You live in a neighborhood where all these other families have all these kids, they're all playing, they're all being kids. And this is one thing, and we'll get to this in an article we're going to look at by Esquire, who the director was like, I wanted to capture the essence of, here is this neighborhood where all of these kids and these families are all getting along and doing their thing and blah, 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 blah. But, you have this woman who's like antagonizing them and doing this. And that's what I got out of it, watching this. And I lived in Ocala. I know this area, right? Ocala, Gainesville. I lived there for a long time. And so I'm watching it and I'm like, it just seemed like such a nice little community of people. It was what you imagine, kids out playing, going from house to house and doing this, being in an environment where you can grow up around kids and have that camaraderie, and seeing the amount of kids that were like out playing. I was like, this is so nice. This is like times past, right? And it's so unfortunate that somebody, there's always one, right? There has to be a Karen. And even the cops at one point said, we would rather the kids be playing football and yelling in this than breaking the law, doing drugs, doing whatever. And this is what I took away from it too. And I was like, look, I understand being like I said, I don't have kids. I get you appreciate your quietness. You come home from work, you do this, kids are out here playing whatever. And I'm like, was there not a happy medium to be like, maybe you go to the parents and you say, hey, do you think maybe, and they might have already done this, I don't know.
Hey, do you think maybe past like 9 o'clock we could have quiet time if possible? What?
Something, right? Something. And then go from there and kind of hope that they might go along with it. I'm going off on a tangent here. Let's keep going, but I wanted to get that out before I forget. Now, as you can imagine, amongst the adults and all this in the community, this created major tension. And literally the kids, adults, everybody, neighbors, they described her as just this angry all the time person who it kept getting worse and worse. The energy in the area had grown very tense, very fearful. Now again, AJ, the victim, she's looking at like, my kids have a right to, like, they can be out here playing. They're being kids, and rightfully so. She is 100% correct. So this is building and building and building and building. So let's talk about like this moment, like what goes down, okay? So the evening of the crime, we're at June 2nd, 2023. So 10-year-old Israel, he tells his mom that Susan, had thrown a roller skate, hit him in the foot, and smashed his tablet. Well, you can already imagine, right, how she felt about that. Now, also, there was talks that Susan had allegedly swung an umbrella at Owens' older son. His name was Isaac. He's 12 years old. Now, you can imagine as a parent or not even a parent, you had this history with this neighbor, your kid comes over, she threw a roller skate at me, she did this and that, and you're going to believe them because of this, the history is there, right? So what do you think she does? She marches over to Susan's apartment. Now keep this part in mind. She also has Israel with her kid. She goes over there with him, right? To get like, okay, this is what happened. Let's go knock on her door and find out. So AJ goes over, she knocks several times on the front door. She's calling for her Susan to come out, come out, come out. Now inside, Susan calls 911. She claims she was afraid for her life. Within 2 minutes before the police arrive, Susan will fire a single bullet through the closed, locked door, and it will strike AJ in the chest while her son stands beside her. Now we're going to talk about that moment again here in a minute, or it gives me goosebumps. But what I want to do is let's kind of slow down the shooting thing here and talk about that for a moment. So like I said, AJ's pounding on this door. She's telling Susan to come out. Susan's yelling at her, and the single shots fired from inside through the closed locked metal door hits Owen in the chest, close range. AJ stumbles backward, yelled for someone to call 911, and collapses as her young son stands there. Now neighbors heard the gunshot, and then and they showed this in the thing, running, they shot my mama, they shot my mama. So one resident runs to perform CPR until the deputies and the paramedics arrive. They get there, they transport AJ to a nearby hospital, and she is pronounced dead shortly upon arrival. Okay, let's talk about the 911 phone call and like some of the aftermath real quick. So within minutes of this, Susan will place a secondary 911 phone call and admits that she had fired her gun. Now in this phone call, she is going to continually say, she meaning Susan, AJ's banging on the door. I felt, she was going to kill me. I felt unsafe. I thought she was going to make it to the door. I feared for my life. These are all very big hallmarks of stand your ground. Well, the investigators would find no sign of forced entry. Number one, it's a metal door. It's dead bolted. No. Okay, that was not going to happen. Now, they would also be able to find they found a single shot from the gun. It definitely came from, her and her gun, meaning Susan. Witnesses would say, no, AJ wasn't trying to break down the door or do anything crazy like that. That was absolutely not what was going on. And Susan would stay out of jail for a minute. You can imagine how that went over. Now, one thing that was had my mouth on the ground watching this, a couple of things. So first of all, this shooting takes place. And let's just go ahead and talk about this part. This is going to be a trigger warning because this part got to me and it might get to me again. So remember, the director has chosen to tell this story through body cam footage, through Ring doorbell footage, all this type of stuff. An amazing choice. It was so raw, and this is the big moment. You see, and I'm already getting goosebumps, you're seeing Ring doorbell footage or whatever of, I think is Israel, running around, crying his eyes out, banging on doors, call 911, they shot my mama, they shot my mama. And one of the neighbors who she's prevalent in the documentary and whatnot, she spoke at sentencing and all this kind of stuff. I don't know her name right now. She's coming out and they're piecing this together because you hear the gunshot on the doorbell and they're coming out and this chaos is ensuing, right? Well, you can imagine Susan's not going to come out that door, right? Okay, so there's that. Now that takes place. They show AJ you see her body at one point. Now they do blur out at another point or whatever, but you see this taking place and whatever. So when the cops get there, they're trying to figure out what happened, right? Because the kids are, kids with her and all this. And at one point they take him, God bless this little boy. And he's like, are you hurt? Are you physically hurt? The cops. And he's like, I'm not hurt, but my heart is broken. Y'all, I mean, I have chills to my bone. Wow. Okay. It was such raw emotion to see a child sit here and number one, express themselves like that. I was just like, oh my God, this boy just saw his mother killed in front of him. I'm not hurt, but my heart is broken. Oh my God. So you can imagine the grandparents come all this type of stuff. Well, as we know, AJ doesn't make it and they find this out pretty soon into it. You see them wheeling her off and they had that thing, that machine that does like this. It's never good when that's there. Kids are all seeing this, neighborhood kids. So they go to the grandparents and like, your daughter's dead. She didn't make it. And they're like, who's going to tell the kids? And the grandfather's like, we're going to tell them. Well, you're watching this in the body cam footage. And y'all, this whole time this is going on, this is me. I literally sat here for probably 20 minutes watching it, like tears. I cannot tell you. I don't know the last time a docuseries gripped my heart, my gut, my throat, and just ripped them out and threw them on the ground. Okay, I was just like, and you watch the grandfather and a couple of cops go over, they go off to the cut, and he's like, something really bad happened today. You saw everything, y'all saw this, she's not coming home. I mean, y'all, it still gets to me really bad. And obviously, you can imagine what the kids do, okay? It's really, really bad. Capturing this raw emotion of devastation that Susan put this family through for zero reason. It's heavy. Okay, and here's the thing. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't prepared for that. Neither were they, right? The victims. Yeah, but just saying as a viewer, and this is why I was like, hold on, what, y'all, it was really heavy. Okay, so there's that. Put that over there. Next thing, Susan, they come, they take her away. There's multiple interviews and interrogations that she does, okay? She is not arrested right away. They initially take her, they interview her, they do all this type of stuff. They're still doing the investigation. So they're like, we're not going to arrest you tonight. We're still doing the investigation, but it's not safe for you to go back there, right? So the cops will come and take her, and then you see body cam footage of cops escorting her to said property, probably her moving out over, I don't know how long, maybe the coming weeks and whatnot. Okay, and she's going out there. Well, you can imagine the neighbors are out there screaming and yelling at her. And Susan will have friends come help her, the cops guard. And I'm just like, I can't believe this. Honey, no. Well, she's going and she's like, oh, they broke my this, they broke my that. Maybe they're finding a way to get into her house and break her stuff. I don't know. But I was like, I cannot imagine as the neighbors, the family, all that, being like, how is this woman still walking around? Now, I get the cops are doing the investigation. I get this, right? And one of the things that you see in a press conference is one of the, I don't know if it was a family member or a neighbor, but them saying, if it was one of us, we would be locked up while this investigation was taking place. So why is she not locked up? And they're like, we get you have to do your investigation, but why is she free during this? Okay. So there's that. And I was just like, I can't believe nothing happened. I mean, for her own safety, if you want to go down that road, I'm just like, girl, I would have just cut losses with whatever was at the apartment or given a key to somebody and been like, have the cops go. I don't know, but I would never have gone back there myself. Okay. Period. End of story. But she does. It's Susan. She's entitled, right? She thinks she's done something wrong, but not in the same context. She's only concerned that it's going to affect her, in my opinion, right? She doesn't say that, but that's my opinion. Now, obviously, she will eventually be arrested, and she goes in for an interview during the police interrogation part, one of them, and they're talking to her, whatnot, and they're really going over the timeline of the 911 phone call. And of course, Susan's like, it felt like 10 minutes, and it felt like this, and I called this one time. Well, the cops, how cops are, they're like, well, we have all this right here. And the first time you called 911, it was here, and it was for this long, and it was disconnected, and then you called back. Well, all these events that Susan's saying took place, she's like, I called, and she's banging on the door, and I went, I washed my hands, and I did this, and then I got scared, and I did all these things. And the cops were like, from the time that you called the police and talked to the 911 or whatever it was, and to the next phone call or whatever, it was like 2 minutes. And they're like, so you're telling us all this escalation took place, and then the cops show up like 5 minutes later, right? It's a short amount of time that this takes place, but Susan's making it sound like it's this, 30-minute window. I understand that there's adrenaline. It makes things seem like they're longer, and I understand that. But the point of this is, it's quite clear, at least in my unprofessional opinion that what Susan did is she called 911 the first time. She took the law into her own hands is what she did. She was mad. She was ticked off. She chose to get a gun and shoot. And she's like, oh, I thought she was going to break in. I thought she was going to do this. Honey, what are you talking about? You get on the phone with 911 then and you stay there. You don't shoot through the door. And one of the things that the investigator said is like, and they're going over these specific laws, and we'll get to some of this here in a minute, of what if there was, and there was, what if you hit the kid? You don't know who's on the other side. You don't know what's happening. And of course, she doesn't have an excuse for this. Okay, so let's talk about for a minute how Netflix has presented this through the body cam, 911 calls, all this. So this is, I would say, not a new way to tell a story via like YouTube and things like this, but maybe for a documentary on Netflix to the mass, it is. And I think that it is going to become way more prevalent because it was so gripping and so raw. You saw me saying, I was like, you know, there's a vast difference in watching body cam footage versus a put together docuseries or documentary. And I'm not trying to say that I don't like docuseries or documentary, but this is more real life. You are seeing it actually play out. You are seeing the moments of things take place. You're seeing it escalate. Now, granted, this is a kind of particular crime because there's many phone calls that take place. And so you're seeing this interaction over time. Some documentaries might not be able to do that because say it's a murder mystery kind of thing where it's like, well, who did this and why did it happen? Well, obviously there's not going to be tons of body cam footage in the beginning. However, I did think that was very interesting. One thing that I would have liked to have seen them explore more with the documentary is the after effect, right? There was lots of interviews she's done from prison, maybe see more of the trial in it, this, that, and the other. Now, already it was a longer docuseries, so I was like, okay, I get it. If the director did a follow-up, I would like to see her delve more into the case itself and into the trial, into the opening statements, what exactly the defense was, etc., etc. And in fact, let's talk for a minute about the trial. So August 2024, after a week-long trial, this is a Marion County Circuit Court, 6-person jury finds Susan guilty of manslaughter by use of a firearm in the killing of A.J. Owens. Now, the prosecutors emphasized that Owens was unarmed, door was locked, no evidence of forced entry. This directly contradicted Susan's self-defense claim. Now, she was sentenced in November 2024 to 25 years in prison, just shy of the 30-year state max. Now, during sentencing, her defense presented testimony about her childhood abuse, PTSD diagnosis, but the judge ruled those factors didn't offset the severity of the crime. Now, here's the thing too, and her attorney said this at sentencing, and she was like, I want to put this on the record. Susan would turn down multiple plea deal offers, right? She insisted that she was not going to plead guilty to any charge because she believed that she acted in self-defense. She very much was wanting to be like, you know, trying to go with this Florida's stand your ground law. Now, you can imagine with A.J. Owens' family, like, okay, great, she got 25 years, A.J.'s not here. You know what I'm saying? So it's like bittersweet kind of a thing. Like, yeah, this does, you know, bring partial justice, I believe was what she was quoted as saying. Now, also, Owens' mother, Pamela Diaz, she publicly vowed to channel her grief into an advocacy. And she started a fund, it's called, and I'm going to read from my notes here, Standing in the Gap Fund, that helps other families impacted by violence. And so I always think it's really beautiful when we see these cases and whatnot. And again, this is like silver lining type stuff, but when people can find a way to create legacy, not only in the minds of themselves, their families, their children and whatnot of the victims, but something like this that can go on to potentially help other people impacted by crimes, so on and so forth. And so I thought this was really beautiful with that. Now, one thing I want to do now is I want to kind of switch gears a little bit and I want to look at an article in Esquire magazine that talks about the documentary, the director, all the things, and use it as another talking point segment. Okay, now you're going to see on the screen here the title of this article, and it's called Here's What Happened After the Perfect Neighbor in Susan Lorenz's Court Case. The Netflix documentary delves into a horrific case of manslaughter in Florida by Matt Blake. This is published October 19th, 2025. So you'll see on the screen here, you'll see Susan, you'll see this little clip from the article. And all this section talks about is, you know, basically her. You know, she's being held at the Homestead Correctional Institution. This is like south of Miami. And you'll see also where it talks about she still insists that she's not guilty and that she launched an appeal to overturn her manslaughter conviction. And the big takeaway from this section here is this, the third paragraph down. In court, she said softly, if I could trade my life for hers, I would, yet her account has never shifted. Lorenz claims she fired through her deadlocked front door in self-defense as A.J. Owens pounded on it from the other side. Now, again, towards the bottom of this, she goes into a little little bit more depth. And this is from the ABC interview that she did, where she talks about what was taking place. You know, it says here, she said she went to the bathroom before hearing heavy banging on the door. She went on a tirade, explicitives, just horrible language, screaming at me, pounding the door so hard, adding that she was terrified, and that's when she opened fire. Now here it talks about the Owens family in the next screenshot I'm putting up here. And that's just like I said a moment ago about the foundation that was started. You see here in the second paragraph, in the wake of AJ's death, the family channeled their grief into action. They founded Standing in the Gap Fund, a charity that supports families affected by gun violence. You'll see where also they did file a wrongful death lawsuit against Loren seeking $50,000 in damages. Now this next section I'm going to put on the screen, you see it says, what is the director's connection to the family? So Gita Gamber personally knew AJ Owens. Owens was the best friend of the director's sister-in-law. Now it goes on to tell how Gita was like using her media experience to basically get this case out there. She was filming protests, vigils, sharing footage with local news outlets, everything to keep the story alive. Now also it talks about her finally, you know, getting all this footage through a Freedom of Information request and all the body cam, all the stuff you see in the Netflix series. She says that, you know, she realized there was enough to tell the story from inside the system itself. It's institutional footage. Right now, there's a lot of doubt about authenticity. I believed people would trust what they were seeing as it unfolded. And then huge for me right here, we're going to read this last paragraph and then talk about this. The archive also offered something rare, a chance to use police footage not to criminalize, but to humanize. Instead of perpetuating the usual narrative that dehumanizes Black and brown communities, Gamber hoped to portray, in her words, quote, a beautiful little community living together, taking care of each other, until, as she put it, one outlier with access to a gun changed all that. And now that's what I want to talk about. I hinted on this earlier, where you're seeing this neighborhood where there's just like this camaraderie amongst the parents and the children. And like I said, they're running from house to house and playing, and the kids are getting along and doing this and that. And it really did shine a sign of being like, wow, this is like, what a nice little community they have going here, right? And then how did this outlier, as the director called it, where did she come from, right? Like how, like why, like what is even going on here? Why is this woman moved in here, taken ownership of this whole field area or whatever? It's bizarre, okay? And so I felt like the director made such an amazing choice by doing this, by sitting here and getting this body cam footage and allowing it to speak, instead of it being something that was like, okay, you know what? Like I said, a regular docuseries or documentary, we're gonna let the viewer see the reality, the day-to-day life, what was going on, but also the escalation of this. And this is such a rare situation to be able to see all this playing out. But sadly, where it leads to is, you know, AJ being murdered in front of her son. Now, also I want to put up here real quick, you'll see this, the 2025 Florida statutes. And the very top here, it says home protection, use or threatened use of deadly force, presumption of fear, or death of great bodily harm. And it says here, a person who is in a dwelling or residence in which the person has a right to be and has no duty to retreat and has the right to stand his or her ground and use or threaten to use. And then it goes into more things here. Non-deadly force, deadly force. And let's just read that be. Deadly force if he or she reasonably believes that using or threatening to use such force is necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself or another, or to prevent the imminent commission of a forcible felony. Now, here's the thing. We see this often play out, and especially in Florida with the stand your ground, the laws going on where people do the craziest stuff. I mean, remember the guy who killed the dude for playing his radio too loud and it was a stand your ground thing? People will do this not thinking, and honestly, some are going to get away with it, right? Susan, where she went wrong, and let's just, I mean, we all know where she went wrong, and this started way before that evening, okay? Her shooting through a door is so careless, so unnecessary. There was no need for it. She's lucky she didn't kill the kid too or hurt the kid, okay? And that's what the cops brought up. And it was like, your door's locked, it's a metal door. You just call 911 and within 2 minutes you're killing this woman? You know, AJ's unarmed. Imagine this. Imagine AJ marched over there, sight unseen, with her own gun, fires through the door. This to me then would be reason you call 911. Let's say the fires are coming. You shoot through the door yourself, right? I'm trying to stop the threat. Now I could see that having more of an argument. This was not the case, right? She has just done something that she, meaning Susan, that she has historically done to the kids, which is victimize the children, okay, for no reason. Said child has gone over, mom, the Karen did blank. AJ, she could have had a long day at work. She could have had this or that. You just get tired of this stuff. She marches over there. And again, mama bear scenario, right? Your kid comes over, this woman who's been victimizing and terrorizing your neighborhood, talking about she hit me with a roller skate and broke my tablet or took it or whatever it was. Please, right? No, that's no. But Susan was safe. Susan was behind a locked door. She wants to ham it up to be like, oh, I felt like she was going to do this. I thought she was going to do this. Now, also in the interview that she does from prison, she will say where she thought that this started out, she rewinds it more before the shooting to where the interaction with the kids and the kids were like, we're going to set you on fire for this. And she was like, and they had the lighter fluid was left out there. And I was like, they're going to set me on fire. They're going to set me on fire. So she's trying to do this whole preliminary thing. She's had all this time to sit in jail and read over this stuff and make her story. The fact of the matter is this, and I don't know if Susan has a mental health situation going on, like a diagnosed like paranoid, I don't know, okay? I don't know. For the life of me, I don't understand, and maybe it comes from an absolute miserable place, because when I'm watching Susan call the cops throughout the show, I'm thinking to myself this, I'm like, who on earth would want to be dealing with the police and this BS on a daily basis like this? The kids are playing football. Turn your TV on, honey. You know what I'm saying? I'm sitting here recording this video right now. I have to stop every time a car drives by in the road. Do you think I'm going to go out here and start telling the cars to stop driving? You know, you see what I'm saying? So that's the part that blows my mind. And I'm just like, I don't understand that. And I did the fixation with it and the absolute amount of time it took to get this involved with it and then involve all your neighbors with it and then the police, right? So there is no reason for it. She's going to try the stand your ground thing. Is not going to work. Okay, it's not. The elements, in my opinion, are there. Am I a lawyer? Absolutely not. So let's round this out. Again, I've been telling everybody to watch this. Number one, let's look at it from a storytelling point of view. The director, pure genius in how she decided to tell the story. And I think it resonated because exactly what she said she wanted to do, she did. Authenticity, realness, rawness. You were seeing people in arguably one of the worst moments of their lives. And I'm like mostly thinking of the children here and obviously her parents. Clearly AJ, right? It's the end of her life. You know, but you're seeing all of this, but then you're also seeing it add up to that, which no one would have saw this coming. You don't think someone's going to do this, but you see the situation with the neighbors, the agitation, her constantly calling the cops, everything that went wrong, right? And it leading up to this. I think it is pure genius on this director's part, how she chose to tell the story. And y'all mark my words, y'all are going to see Netflix pumping out some body cam stuff, right? Because I'm sure this is massive. Not only that, and I'm jumping all over the place, but when the director said she wanted to show this little community and how all these people were getting along, obviously except for Susan, and she did just that. You know, like I've said, if you followed me, I studied like English creative writing. I'm very big into storytelling, learning about people's lives, the good, the bad, the ugly, all those things. And so that's what I really saw her. It's like, this is a genius storyteller, this director. She's really putting this out there. And then combined, you know, with the family continuing on by creating this fund and doing all this, AJ, I think, would be proud in many directions, right? And obviously her children wish much better to have her here. But wow, to see these people all come around and do all of this in her memory and her name, it's just, I mean, it gives me goosebumps. So that being said, I will get off my little pedestal or my soapbox, whatever you want to call it, and quit going on about this. I've been dying to talk to y'all about this. I am talking dying. By the time you watch this, Dr. Barry and I would have had a collab on the podcast channel about it. Love Dr. Barry. Go check her out. Go check our collab out, our conversation about it. But also let me know what you think down in the comment section. I want to know all your thoughts. I'm not going to ask specific questions. I'm so curious to go read the comments and see what y'all had to say. If you have not watched this and you're going to take my recommendation to watch it, trigger warning, okay? You already know what it's about. Know that this is going to punch you in the gut, okay? It is going to punch you in the gut and rip your heart out. So there's that. Anyways, if you're still watching, thank you so much for doing so. I greatly appreciate it. While you're leaving those comments down there, if you could pretty please drop some little pillows off and sofas for Roscoe and Spirit, Bo and Luke, myself, and you, the most important, the Sofa Squad. You make the channel possible. It wouldn't be here without you, and I greatly appreciate it. And until we all hang out down in that comment section to do all the stuff I just talked about, I'll see y'all soon. I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Roscoe on the Instagram, go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup that hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.